Hey, welcome back to the Hotel Orloff here in scenic Rural Retreat, Virginia, historic Rural Retreat, Virginia, where it's not just a hotel, it's also a museum of American popular culture. And today we're going to be looking at some comic books, some of the comic books that first inspired me to collect comics, ladies and gentlemen. I'm multitasking. I'm doing this episode while I'm watching the House Judiciary Committee. It's Jerry Nadler talking right now. But anyway, they're going to have Durham on here in a minute live, and I thought I'd watch that. Haven't had breakfast yet. It's a wonderful sunny Wednesday morning. So let's take a look at some Marvel Bronze Age horror. Now, the Bronze Age of comics, to me, was from 1971 until I kind of started getting sick of what was going on. I'd say the Bronze Age, I'll just say it ended in 1980, or maybe a little before. That's honestly, I love a particular period of the period of comics that got me in, when I was 5, 6, 7 in the early 1970s. That's what I really love. And of course, I love the Silver Age, the decade before, in the 1960s, because that's just. But of course, when I was starting to buy comics in the 70s, the 1960s seemed like some impossibly ancient time, even though it was just a few years before. That was the time that my older brothers were buying comic books. And my older brothers were, one of my brothers was born in 52 and one was born in 54. And they were buying comics in the 60s. I wish I could have been buying comics in the 60s, but I was born in 1965. And they mainly bought DC comics. They didn't like Marvel. They bought, Justice League, and my brother Mike was really into Dial H for Hero and the House of Mystery comic. He was very proud. He had every issue of that. And the War comics, they were buying tons of those. A lot of stuff from my older brothers was handed down to me, their toys and their stuffed animals. But the two things were never handed down to me: the Tonka trucks, because I guess they were too heavy or too cumbersome to be brought in one of our many moves with my dad being in the military, and the comic books, which were stored in my dad's Foot Locker. They never got to me. I still have that Foot Locker, not in very good shape, in the garage, but there are no comics in it. And my older brother Mike said he started to get disenchanted with comics when there was an issue with Superman and Batman, and they'd been drugged and they were hallucinating, having like LSD. Hallucinations. I want to know. I imagine that happened about 1968. If you guys know what issue that might have been, where Superman and Batman are hallucinating, please let me know. I'm imagining it could have been a World's Finest comic or something. I'd like to know the comic that caused my older brother Mike to get sick and not want to buy them anymore. But I understand that, because there are things that happen in comics and in popular culture that just make you just disgusted. And anyway, I'll start showing you the comics because, I tend to talk too much. Here's a copy. Oh, we need more light. Sorry, ladies and gentlemen, I forgot to put the ring light on. Let me do that. Anyway, while I'm up, I'll show you what we've been doing.
If the duo ever found evidence proving that Donald Trump was right all along, that evidence certainly never made it into the Durham report.
Now, the other day, Sunday, was Father's Day, and I tend to ignore these holidays like Father's Day and Mother's Day, since my father and mother aren't around anymore. I try to not think about it. But I am wearing my father's t-shirt here from, let me just move this darn camera. West Catholic High School for Boys, 50th reunion. Look at this. Class of 1947.
public.
So what year was this T-shirt manufactured? I'm not good at math. 47 to 57, 57 to 67. Oh, this is shirts from 1997. A terrible year for comic books, but a good year for T-shirts because it's still holding together. Look what I got Saturday, the Munsters soundtrack. Now I'm telling you guys, there are only 2,000 made of this. And this is from the master tapes. You get 80 minutes of music from the first and second seasons of the Munsters. Unbelievable. The music of Jack Marshall. On the second disc, you got music from the Deputy, Wagon Train, and the Virginian. I'd play you some of this, but I've got the player hogged recording of the House Judiciary Committee. Anyway, get this. You can just search it on the internet, but it's from La La Land Records. But yeah, they got the... Ooh, I said yeah. I hate when my people say that. You can get it from La La Land Records. Just search for it. You'll find it. There's only one Munsters soundtrack that's ever existed, and it didn't exist until now. Almost 60 years later, it finally comes out. Something I've always wanted. So, you know, I don't tend to buy new things. It is a new thing, but it's an old thing. What my wife and I started watching last night.
The report also references classified material that has been called likely disinformation to lay out a series of accusations against the former president's perceived enemies.
Was this movie, The Great Ziegfeld? It's got William Powell, Myrna Loy. It's the biography of Ziegfeld. My wife's been really into Ziegfeld lately. She's getting all these movies from back then about Florence Ziegfeld.
It may be hard to remember, but at the outset of the Durham investigation, Mr. Durham was a well-respected career prosecutor with a solid reputation.
But why, you ask, are you watching all these old movies? Because, you know, I try to watch new movies, and I can't believe how bad they are. I like the first two Ant-Man movies. I like the first 10 years of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I didn't just like it, I loved it. Captain America, the Winter Soldier, all this stuff. And then Captain Marvel came along. And then these horrible TV series. So anyway, there's a new Ant-Man movie, right? So it's on Disney Plus, and somehow we have a subscription to that. I don't have any clue. But, oh man. I hear people defending it online, and they say, oh, it doesn't have an agenda. Oh, they all have agendas. This movie started talking about climate change in the first minute. You know, it's like, what have I been doing since the Great Blip? Well, my girlfriend or wife's been trying to solve climate change or whatever. Okay, first of all, in this stupid Marvel universe, the Avengers, after all that, they're just disbanded. They're not continuing to fight. I mean, it's just like the Avengers, according to these movies, did a couple, 2-3 things, and that's all. And now they're gone, and they're separated, and Ant-Man, of course, is an ineffectual, moronic, not doing anything with his life. He wrote a book, but people on the street don't, you know, call him Spider-Man instead of Ant-Man. Oh, it's just so funny. Okay, so Kang appears in this movie, but they expect you to actually have sat down and watched that Loki TV series that's unwatchable. The first couple episodes, this is not funny at all. They're trying to make this incredible. Oh man, it was bad, and I came to it wanting to love it. I loved the portrayal of Loki in the Thor movies. I wanted to like a Loki series. Now, making a Loki series without Thor is kind of questionable, but anyway. So this new Ant-Man movie. No, we were looking at Beware. I've actually got 2 copies of Beware. These wonderful. Oh, I didn't put the light on. That's what I was supposed to do. Anyway. Okay, Kang appears, and Michelle Pfeiffer, the original Wasp, Janet Van Dyne, is caught up in this microverse, quantum realm, whatever they're calling it this week. I think it was called the Microverse, but they can't call it that anymore because they don't have rights to the Micronauts anymore. Toy. Anyway, let me set this light up. I have the light right here, see? Oh, Durham's talking. How about that?
Unaddressed, these issues could result in significant national security risks and further erode the public's faith and confidence in our justice system. As we said in the report, our findings were sobering. I can tell you, having spent 40 years plus as a federal prosecutor, they were particularly sobering to me. A number of my colleagues who spent decades in the FBI themselves, they were sobering. While I'm encouraged by some of the reports that have been implemented by the FBI, the problems identified in this report, anybody who actually reads the report, the details of the report, the documented portions of the report, I think find that
No, Kang shows up. But apparently you're supposed to have watched a TV series in order to understand what happens in a movie. In other words, you have to watch everything, nothing self-contained, including the really bad things, in order to understand what's going on. Sorry, ladies and gentlemen. How's that? All right. So, Kane shows up. Apparently, it's heavily implied that the original Wasp, Michelle Pfeiffer, and Kang have a romantic relationship. It's not shown. It's not referenced. But the writer or director of the movie said, "Well, we didn't really want to say it, but you can. It's kind of implied. You can just use your imagination." The reason I know that is I looked up the really disgusting thing online just to see if what the writer had to say for themselves about the really disgusting thing, and I found the disgusting thing is, and I've always loved the actor Bill Murray from back in the National Lampoon days to Saturday Night Live, to several of his movies. Okay, Bill Murray is in this movie for absolutely no reason. But it turns out Bill Murray, when they sit down to dinner with, Michelle Pfeiffer and Kirk Douglas's son, Michael Douglas, is there, who now looks like Kirk Douglas because he's gotten older. And Michael Douglas says, "So you guys went out?" And she says, "Well, I had needs." In other words, okay, so in the first movie, it's established that Ant-Man and the Wasp are separated for decades and decades, and she's trapped down in the quantum realm, and he gets her back, right? And it's just this big romantic thing that this couple has been separated, and now they're back together. Well, of course, in this movie, with its modern sensibilities, of course I cheated on you. I didn't think I'd ever come back to Earth, so I just had needs. I had to go out with this Bill Murray guy that's just this disgusting guy, and I had to also probably have a relationship with Kang and who knows who else down here in the quantum realm. And Michael Douglas says, "Well, I went out with a couple of girls too, but I couldn't do any, they weren't you." So in other words, we've established that the original Ant-Man has been cuckolded by the original Wasp. And I don't like that stuff. Because you're constantly in the Disney universe, you're making the heroes morons, or you're minimizing them, or they did that to Doctor Strange in that last terrible Doctor Strange movie. His girlfriend, she's getting married to someone else. And every one of them, every one of these heroes, except maybe Captain America, they just established that they're just wimps, man, and they have to be rescued by teenage girls, and it's the woman that's powerful, and they every time, and even in the non-Disney movies, there was a Lone Ranger movie. Lone Ranger, let's make him dumb, and then Tonto will be the smart one that helps him out. So that's why no one liked that movie. Plus the fact that no one in today's generation knows who the Lone Ranger is. But they don't think about that. Now, in the original radio show and TV show, the Lone Ranger and Tonto were equally smart, equally brave. Kids on the playground playing the Lone Ranger, if you're playing Tonto, it's just as cool as playing the Lone Ranger because he's just as cool. Every kid knew the names of the horses of the Lone Ranger and Tonto. They knew everything about them. Now nobody knows who those are because it's just not part of our culture anymore, and everything's forgotten. Everything, no, I mean that's just the way it is. Used to be when I was a kid getting into comics. There were these older guys that were into pulps, and pulps were impossibly expensive. No one could buy pulps. That was something that was, way back in the old days. And big little books, incredibly expensive. Now those are pretty affordable because everybody that was into them, for the most part, has passed away. Sorry. And all these people, you buy these comics because you love them, because if you're buying them as an investment, you're going, I'm going to pass them down to my kids, and they're going to hold on to them, and they're just going to keep going up and up. Maybe the first appearance of Superman might. Superman has magically been remembered over generations and generations, and Batman and Wonder Woman. But most of these heroes, nobody today, if you go to the mall, they don't know who the Lone Ranger or the Shadow is. How many people know who Myrna Loy is now, who was one of the biggest stars in Hollywood, or Rudolph Valentino? Maybe, I don't even think people know who Rudolph Valentino is. Theda Bara, most of her movies are lost. They've just disintegrated. And the thing is, these comics I don't think they're going to keep their value. I mean, of course, you won't be around anymore, so maybe it doesn't matter. But, if you're buying, I just don't get it. I mean, all these people that slab their comics, you think, because I was watching on Facebook, there's an EC Fan Addicts Club, and there's people that fight horribly in the chat about whether you should slab comics or not. And then the moderator comes on and says, I guess I have more than one copy of this. Moderator will come on and say, we are not supposed to fight about slabbing versus non-slabbing, and someone will say, well, the reason that people are fighting is because one group looks at them as stock, like a stock portfolio, their investments, and the other group is just nostalgic for their childhood. Maybe, but none of you buying World War II comics are nostalgic for your childhood, because you'd have to be in your 80s to have been a child when those World War II comics came out. You're just buying them because they're cool, and I absolutely understand that. I don't understand not wanting to ever look inside your comics, though. See, this book has reprints from the early 50s, from the pre-code horror era, and then it also has news stories. Delusions of a Dragon Slayer. This is Chamber of Chills 1. Pretty soon they would stop having news stories in them, and they'd be all reprints of pre-code horror, pretty much. Well, they actually have two news stories. That's a news story too, and one it changes. Anyway, so people are arguing about all that. Chamber of Chills. Okay. I don't know. Chamber of Chills. Oh, okay. This one I bought as a kid. So this one, see, I have nostalgia for this. I have nostalgia for the early 70s. But I love comics from, the 40s, 50s, even though it wasn't my childhood. It isn't just people investing in comics, because they love the comics too. It's just they kind of love the covers, and they love to wall their rooms with these comics and show them off. And but anyway, so why am I bothered by and the Wasp not being faithful to her husband. I mean, she never thought she'd see her husband again. Well, I don't. It bothers me because these heroes are supposed to be virtuous, and I know that at a certain point, it just became cool to have anti-heroes. I don't know. Whatever. It's just ridiculous. I just don't, Zack Snyder liked to do that. Zack Snyder said, well, it's just ridiculous to think these heroes would be paragons of virtue. Look at our society. Well, no, what you did is you're just so stupid that you made a Watchmen movie and you thought every hero should be, every comic book should be the Watchmen. And you should show, I'm just old-fashioned. I like comics the way they used to be, and it's important to tear down every hero to certain people. It's important to tear down society to make people hate the past. That's what they do. I guarantee you, this generation that wears the virtual reality goggles and stares at their phone all day, when they're older, all these comics will be thrown in a landfill. They won't have respect for them. There may be a few, but the comic prices are inflated. They're just going to go down because there's. I see a lot of these comic collectors, and I think they must be my age, and I realize no, they're about 10 years younger than me, or maybe 20 years younger than me, and sometimes. And they're nostalgic for the early 90s with Deadpool, and I don't like that time period, and Venom and Carnage and Todd McFarlane. They're nostalgic for that. Okay, and so the generation, and they're in their 40s, and the generation now that's in their 20s, what are they nostalgic for? The comics of 10, 20 years ago? What was that? They were terrible. And so and the only people buying comics 10, 20 years ago were older people. So pretty much there's going to be very few younger people coming into nostalgic for comics because they don't care. And then there'll be no new collector. I mean, there's going to be tons of comics out there, and there's going to be very few people wanting them. And the laws of supply and demand mean that these prices are not sustainable. I just don't think they are. And I'm talking 20, 30, 40 years from now, we won't even be around. So I just say buy comics you love. If you're just, I just don't see the point. Oh well.
Mr. Chair, Mr. Durham, your report reads like a defense of the Trump campaign and an attack on Hillary Clinton because that's exactly what it is.
This is great. I need to rewatch this. Oh, Jay Nedler, you're attacking. Oh man. This is one of those that was sold at a army base at a PX. It's not a Mark Jewelers insert. It's one of these that National Diamond Sales inserts, but same thing. Creatures on the List 16. I'm just... So, I've always been out of touch with the zeitgeist of the times. I've never really been in... I guess I was one of the early adopters of wacky packages in 3rd grade. I was one of the first 2-3 kids in the school at Regency Place Elementary in San Antonio that knew what wacky packages were, and pretty soon everyone was into them. So I was cool there for a few minutes, and then uncool for many years, collecting. What happened is American Graffiti came out. And I got into the music of the 50s and early 60s, and rockabilly music, right? And then I was really into that. And even kind of halfway dressed that way, had my hair that way. And then in high school, the Stray Cats come out, and there's this big new explosion from England of bands like the Stray Cats and the Polecats and Shakin' Stevens. Well, most people didn't know about that, but Stray Cats became big in, what was it, 81, 82? And all of a sudden it's like, that nerd, he's part of the vanguard of, how did he know what was going to become cool? It's just like, if you just stay with what you love, eventually you might become cool for 5 minutes, and that was about how long it lasted. This is a Steranko cover, isn't that gorgeous? Gulliver of Mars is not an imitation of John Carter, Warlord of Mars. This is actually, the Gulliver of Mars books, or book, or whatever it was, predated the John Carter. The first John Carter book came out in 1912, something like that. And the Gulliver Jones book came out before that. But I think Marvel tweaked Gulliver Jones to make it a little bit more like John Carter. Something like that. Marvel was desperate to, Conan was starting to sell, and so they were wanting to adapt other sword and sorcery stuff at that time. Anyway, 21-22. But I see we need to come up with some new acronyms here. Because I notice, I watch YouTube and I see these people, the real high rollers that are buying early issues of Detective Comics and early, the very first issues with the Human Torch and Captain America from World War II, the big high rollers, the guys that are wealthy, for whatever, they're just rich guys on YouTube. There's nothing wrong with being rich. I'm not some commie. But they figure, I'm the king of all comic books. I'm going to come up with my new acronyms. So they're showing a copy of Detective Comics, number 28 or something. And this is my new copy of Tech 28. Tech. It's like, what are you, a Scientologist? You're coming up with new acronyms and new words for things. No one asked you to come up with something. I mean, Detective Comics, slurring my words, how long does it take to say Detective Comics 28 instead of saying Tech 28? Does that sound cool? I don't know. I need to be quiet. Why do these things bother me? I don't know why. I understand if you're saying NASA, takes a while to say national blah 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 blah, or FBI. Instead of saying Federal Bureau of Investigation, you say FBI. It's a lot easier. But do I need to call Captain America Cap 42? Here's my copy of Cap 42. Do I really need to make Detective Comics Tech? Just so you sound like you're some big expert on something. I try to make these videos, as if someone was watching that knows nothing about comics but would like to know about comics. And then you start throwing these terms around, tech this, tech that. How are they supposed to know what you're talking about? That's why I explained what my definition of the Bronze Age is at the beginning of this. Because how do I know that the person watching this knows what the Bronze Age is? We can't make these assumptions. I don't know. So,
7 years ago, the FBI launched.
Why don't I just call this, here's my copy of COTL 26. COTL, you all know that means Creatures on the Loose, right? COTL. Thongor, that takes a while to say. Why don't I just call him Thaw? Here's the great Thaw. Warrior of Lost Lemuria, well, WOLL. Yeah. Thaw, WOLL. You remember in the COTL books? And then I just sound like I'm L. Ron Hubbard making up little things. Here's another. I got two. I got a lot of these. Why? Because I'm an idiot? Yes, kind of. I'm always like, do I have that issue? I'm not sure. And then I wind up buying them over and over again. Except, I don't have I don't have creatures on. I'm sorry, COTL number 28. I'm seeing that. So I'm missing an issue. I thought I had the complete run. Why don't we call it the CR? I thought I had the CR of this. In my PC. I thought I had the CR in my PC, man. I thought I had the complete run in my personal collection. I need to go to my LCS in order to get the CR for my PC. 29. Shoot, why don't I have issue 28, man? That's just disturbing. What I would always do is I would buy what I found. I didn't do much mail order, really, until the pandemic. My wife ordered some comics for me. Before that, I never really dealt with mail order, except for getting some Betty Page magazines back in the 80s. I used to get a lot of those kind of magazines from the 50s, and now apparently they're very valuable. But 31. Okay, I've got a lot of copies of 31. I could probably trade if someone has a 28 and needs a 31. Yeah, sometimes people come up with these acronyms, PC for personal collection, but normal people already have used that acronym, PC for personal collection, so doesn't work. Oh my God. Oh my God. All right.
They did not have that adequate basis, as you talked about, to launch this investigation. Let's move on.
Okay, what's going on here, man? Here's a beat-up copy of Crypt of Shadows, number 3.
All the way at the top were predisposed to go after candidate Trump. This bias likely affected
Yeah, buddy.
of FBI.
Here's Crypt of Shadows, number 7. I don't have a very good collection of these. I mean, I thought I did, but I'm missing a lot of issues. And I couldn't buy them all when I was a kid. This is the first Crypt of Shadows I bought as a kid. This is my childhood copy. Because I didn't have that much money. I got, $1, $2 maybe allowance when I was in 3rd and 4th grade. And then I had to prioritize what I was going to buy. I bought this one as a kid, too.
See how real this bias was. FBI Deputy Assistant Director Peter Strzok drafted and
10.
the Crossfire Hurricane opening.
Yeah, I don't like seeing the heroes degraded. I don't like seeing Robin, Dick Grayson, beating people and then breaking windows of cars and raking their faces through the broken glass in the first episode of that Teen Titans TV live action series. I mean, I overall enjoyed what I saw of that series, but I don't like the heroes should have virtue. And I know you think, well, no one has virtue in today's society. Well, the heroes should. And you shouldn't show Batman waking up in bed next to some girl, Zack Snyder, just because you think that's something that's done in the James Bond movies. But you don't do that with Batman. You don't. They even did that with Iron Man in the first Iron Man movie. Although I love that movie, these are things I question, and I think, what is one of the top superhero movies? The first Superman movie with Christopher Reeve from 1978, because it defied the zeitgeist of the time of the late 70s when everything was negative, and because we'd gone through Watergate and the Vietnam War and everything was cynical and the heroes were always bad, or the heroes were always killed at the end, or everything was bad. Superman was shown as completely virtuous and a completely nice guy, smiling, and people loved it because people were hungry for that. And people are hungry now for stuff that doesn't preach to them all these commie agenda stuff. That's why apparently that last Top Gun movie was loved. I haven't seen it yet, but people loved it because they're hungry for stuff that isn't in their face preaching to them the way they should be. This is my childhood copy of Dead of Night, #1.
I want to take a look at some of the other things that I didn't find in the report.
Dead of Night 2.
Looking at the FBI's behavior, did you find any evidence that the FBI was...
Guys, I haven't had breakfast yet, so I'm a little irritable. I'm hangry. My wife calls it hangry. And it's okay. If you want to call Detective Comics tech, do it. It just kind of... I need to be quiet because my wife says, you're going on there and you're complaining about people that say so yeah and stuff, and it's going to hurt people's feelings, and you're just being a bully, and you were bullied when you were a kid, and now you're being a bully online, and it's just really not cool, and I don't like it, she tells me. She says, I don't like when you're, and I don't want to be a bully. I was always, there was a lot of bullies when I was a kid. Now I'm just... But I come on here and I talk about things that annoy me, and I don't know. Apparently, I don't want to hurt people's feelings. I need to just be quiet. But I can't stand the world today. It's like, look at what's going on. Maybe if Donald Trump gets back in, he'll clean house and things will be wonderful. But then 4 years, maybe 8 years, maybe there'll be another Republic. Eventually, there'll be some other Democrat that comes in, and on the first day, they'll destroy everything that he did. They'll just sit down and start writing, signing their names on things and shutting everything down, just like Biden did. Unless everyone wakes up and these Democrat demons never get back in. That's the only hope, that people are starting to wake up. I think that a lot of them are. But, yesterday, Hunter Biden has done unbelievably horrible things. And yesterday, it's like, we're honest. We're going after the president's son. President Biden's sons, we're charging him too. So you can't say we're just only going after Trump. Yeah, you're charging him with nothing compared to what he really did. You're coming up with the most minor charges, and it's like, oh, no jail time needed. But Trump, I think he needs about 400 years. Yeah, he's 77, 78. What is he now? He just had a birthday. I don't know. Is he going to be around 400 years? I mean, I don't know. I don't think so. Here's Fear #7. I have some copies of Fear in the other box. I need to bring them over because I've been separating Silver Age and Bronze Age, but I'm starting to put all the horror Silver Age and Bronze Age in this. What this is. Where's the darn lid? Marvel Bronze Age horror. See, the problem is I've got this written on the other side, Charlton Comics, and then I put the lid on backwards, and then I'm like, where's my Marvel Bronze? Because I've got the wrong size. So what I got to do, this is the white. It's probably not good to... Oh, I've got some packages to send off. See, look what I did. So now I know it's this side. I've got this package. I won't show addresses, don't worry. This package is going off to Califon, New Jersey. And that one has episodes 11 through 25 of Tomb of Terror. And this one's going off here in a few minutes because the post office doesn't open till 8:30. It's not 8:30 yet. No, I'm sorry. It's 5 minutes till 9. The time has passed. This one's going to New York. And this says episode 4. And this other one's going off to Gotham City Comics in Mesa, Arizona. And it has 17 through 32. Yes, I'm up to episode 32 now because I'm just bored, and I just sit down and create new episodes of The Tomb of Terror, my new direct-to-video TV series that you can order too. And if you order them in big quantities, I'll give you a discount. This is the first Man-Thing in color comics. He started in Savage Tales #1, which is which those are comic books. I'm sick of people saying those Marvel magazines aren't comic books. Okay, so I have 10, but I don't have 11, but I have 12. So 11's something I ought to get. Maybe you can still afford it because it's not a key issue. Some people only, that's another thing that annoys me. Some people only buy key issues. Oh, I have 2 issues of 12. So I would gladly trade you 1 issue of 12 for an issue 11. Wait. Yeah. I need 11, man. 13. This is one of those weird things, is when I look at the books now, I realize the Man-Thing was brown, but I have this memory of him always being green. I don't know why that is. I think he became green a little later. Here's another copy of 13. Or maybe, you know, my childhood memories mix up the Man-Thing with the Swamp Thing. Another copy of 14. Here's 15. Now, comics don't look like this anymore. This is why I love this time period. And I was only buying horror comics at that time until I discovered the Fantastic Four, which is one of the, which was the greatest Marvel comic. Oh, there's some Stan Lee documentary on the Disney Channel now, and yesterday or the day before, Jack Kirby's family issued a strongly worded letter condemning that movie. I'm sure you've heard about that. Yeah, you see, he's starting to become more green here. Yeah, my memory's not that faulty. He's getting more greenish. 19. 20. This was a valuable comic for a little bit. This is my childhood copy. And you people speculating on these movies, I'm telling you, man, yeah, let's buy all those Eternals comics. There's a movie coming out. Yeah, big deal. The Black Knight. He's going to be in the Eternals movie. Let's buy the Black Knight comics. Buy what you like. Do you like the Eternals? Great. Then, yeah, see, Kevin Johnson at Gotham City Comics just got this comic in. I told him, yeah, I already have that. But if you don't have this, call him up and one of... Never mind. Here's 22. Yeah, call up Kevin. He's the nicest guy in the world in Mesa, Arizona, and he ships out like lightning fast. 23. Here's 24, Blade the Vampire Slayer. I hear that the writer's strike has pretty much caused that movie to be pushed back real far. I don't imagine Blade the Vampire Slayer will probably be a teenage girl, or he'll have a teenage girl assistant that will be much better than him. Oh, that was the other thing. The new Ant-Man, Scott Lang's daughter. Of course, she's this precocious teenage girl, just like Black Panther's sister, that can just do anything. And she's developed this machine that sends signals to the quantum realm. And of course, she's just so brilliant, and there's no real explanation why she's brilliant, because she's not from the genetic bloodline of Hank Pym. She's from the bloodline of this convict, Scott Lang, who's kind of portrayed as a dullard. Oh, that's the other thing. The comic book the comic books aren't guiltless either. I mean, there was a storyline apparently where Hank Pym was beating his wife Janet in the comics, and there's a domestic abuse. I don't like that. Just like my older brother upset about Batman and Superman on LSD trips. I don't want to see that in comics. I know that should not be in comics. 28. I've got a lot of these Morbius books. But that movie tanked these books in value. But it doesn't matter. They're valuable to me because I love these books. But to me, that Morbius that I just showed you is not the Morbius I saw in the movie. It has nothing to do with it. I'm just going to have to ignore that these movies even exist. because all they do is create cognitive dissonance. That was the word in college that they liked to bandy around. Cognitive dissonance.
There's a double standard at the Justice Department. You know why they believe that?
Journey into Mystery. This is the...
That has got to change.
They brought Journey into Mystery back as a horror title and started it over again with issue 1 during the 20-cent era of the dawn of the Bronze Age. Okay, number 7.
Value the independence of a special counsel, do you not?
I do.
In a letter to Attorney General Garland submitting your report, you asked him to allow...
Oh, it's Miss Jackson Lee. Here's
Thank you and your office for permitting our inquiry to proceed independently without interference.
Okay.
For the members of the citizen-
Journey into Mystery number 8. Obviously, I need to bag and board it. Oh, that's the other thing. You know, you like, well, you guys just pick on these people that slab their comics. They have a right to do it. It's their comic. Every way you collect a comic is just as legitimate. Well, see, they started it. They started it, teacher, by starting to call comics that weren't slabbed raw. And raw, you think raw meat, like the wolf ate raw meat. Oh, that's disgusting. Or you know, it's like in the raw. It just sounds raw. It's just a word that sounds bad. Oh, that comic's in the raw. Ugh. You know, oh, you're cisgender. Ugh. You know, it's just a word that just sounds bad. It's like, oh, is that a disease? What does that mean? Oh, it just means you're heterosexual. Oh, well, but cisgender sounds like, oh, I need to go to the, what is that? I need to go to the doctor? Is that a disease? Yeah, that comic's raw. Oh, it's not slabbed yet. You should send it off and have it graded for $25. Yeah, they look down on us for having these raw comics, so we can look down on them for having them slabbed comics. Here's number 10. Another copy of 10. Look at that. Wonderful. Let's look inside.
He was not involved as when I became special counsel. Prior to that, I worked under the supervision of the Attorney General.
Yeah, this wonderful pre-code Marvel horror. There's a Steve Ditko story. But I've never... I love Star Trek, but I hated being around Star Trek fans. I love comics, but I hated being around comic book fans at conventions. They just drove me crazy. I love horror movies. I hate the horror conventions because those people just, they're all into Freddy Krueger, and I'm into Universal Monsters and Famous Monsters of Filmland. But they're into, sometimes I can see eye to eye with them and a shared love of Vampira, but they're loving Vampira because you know, the Misfits, Glenn Danzig worked with Vampira, and I'm loving Vampira. Well, it's not that I don't like the Misfits. It's just, I don't know. I used to be worse back in the 80s. I'd go into the mall and it's like, I hate all these people. I wouldn't say it out loud. I was very, what is the word, misanthropic back then? Because I'd been picked on all my childhood, and it's just like, ugh. Ordinary people, normal people. And now I'm thinking, normal people, there were actually people that voted for Joe Biden? What's wrong with these people? It's the same people, probably. These are books I bought as a kid. I bought 1 through 3 of Monster Frankenstein. I don't think I bought this one as a kid. I bought this one later. But I was in 2nd grade, I wasn't, and I have 2 copies of 4 now. 5. Beautiful art. I don't know if people are into these now or not. Because like Moon Knight doesn't appear in this comic, or it doesn't have any key issues where first appearances, you know, that comic collectors would seek out. But it's a wonderful comic. They changed it to the Frankenstein monster with with issue 6. It became the Frankenstein monster instead of the Monster of Frankenstein. But I've always filed it under M when I'm filing comics because it started as the Monster of Frankenstein. That's how I am. Here's 9, where he crosses over with Dracula from Tomb of Dracula. Here's 10. 11. Yeah, so we've turned back and we're watching these old movies from like 1936 because I just can't stand the stuff of today. I'm missing issue 12, and I can't account for that, except for the fact that I probably just didn't buy it. Here's an issue 13. It's in bad shape. It's not my childhood copy. I would have never treated comics this badly. It's looks like it's loose at least one staple. It's something I've found somewhere. Yeah, I've got to find issue 12.
Mr. Chairman, parliamentary inquiry.
14.
Whose time is that you were speaking of?
That was that time, that was the opening that I yielded back.
It's a select.
Mr. Chairman, that is
15.
absolutely
I was
inappropriate.
just pointing out something that I think is so.
Mr. Chairman, that is not appropriate.
We will go to Mr. Klein for 5 minutes. The gentleman from Georgia.
16.
Virginia, excuse me, is recognized.
Thank you. Mr. Durham, your report is not just sobering as you
17.
outrageous and deeply troubling to me.
And then this isn't old, and it's not Bronze Age, but I threw it in the box just because I'm putting all the Marvel horror into these boxes. Except I haven't put did I put Tomb of Dracula in these? I'm going to have to see when we open the next box. I don't remember if I put Tomb of Dracula in here or not. I think these issues were being done by Mort Todd when he was at Marvel. Monsters on the Prowl, 16.
And individuals within the
I'm trying to remember. This changed from another title. It was it Creatures on the Loose? No. Because this is like, what was Monster? I'm gonna have to look that up. Because, or maybe Monsters on the Prowl. No, Monsters on the Prowl started as a Silver Age comic, and I must have those in the Silver Age boxes. I need to move them into these boxes. That's why I'm starting with 16. Because I can tell this is one of the first 20-cent comics, and I consider this Bronze Age to start with 20-cent comics, because you can tell by the way, if you just know how to look, the 20-cent is in a certain font, and then the letters in Marvel Comics Group are a little more separated than they would be later. Let me show you. See here at the top, they're closer together. It's such a subtle thing. See how they're more separated up here in the cigar band? I call it cigar band. But we should call it the CB. Yeah, because we'll start calling it the CB. Those in the Gratu Army will learn all of the new terminology and will amaze everyone. They'll have to learn our acronyms. So, I mean, because I've been collecting comics for over 50 years, and then someone that started collecting comics decades after me is starting to come up with acronyms that I've got to learn their acronyms. No, I'm not. So I don't use key issue, and I'm not good. I don't want to. I don't want to know this new stuff. Okay, here's 17. Here's another copy of 17. Isn't that amazing? Then I don't have 18, 19, 20, or 21, but I have 22. I need to get those issues. What's wrong with me? That I'm missing 23. Then I have 24. These books just never appeared much at my LCS, my local comic book store. This one I bought when I was a kid. Because there was no demand for them. People wanted X-Men and everything, and they weren't interested in the monster books. They weren't interested in westerns for sure. They weren't interested in romance. Those books, they didn't even put them on the floor because a lot of those early comic book stores were very tiny. the original Lone Star Comics, when it first opened in the summer of '77, was barely the size of the porch of this house. Okay, into the next box. Do I have Tomb of Dracula in here? No. Yeah, I got to do that. If I have Frankenstein in here, then Dracula should be in here. Here's a modern comic that I put in here, Monsters on the Prowl. But I think it's reprints of old stuff. So we come to supernatural thrillers. Look at that. Wonderful Steranko cover. Supernatural thrillers had new stories adapted from literary sources. That's The Invisible Man, obviously. Here's another copy. It's absolutely raw. It's not even bagged and boarded. It's shocking, huh? I always love this this ad promoting the new Saturday morning lineup on NBC.
And what were some of those concerns that they raised?
Well, ultimately, the Fisk issued
The
a memorandum indicating that
Valmeric pencils. Oh, I forgot about him. He was a great artist. No one talks about him anymore. He was great. He did a sword and sorcery story in Monsters Unleashed that was phenomenal. Here's Supernatural Thrillers number 3, The Valley of the Worm. It's based on a Robert E. Howard story. And Marvel reprinted this a few years ago as a dollar comic, so it must have some collector demand. Wait, what was Supernatural Thrillers number 1? Why do I?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Durham, you were appointed by...
I don't have number 1. Here's number 4, Jekyll and Hyde.
Who recommended you, who appointed you?
as the special counsel,
What was number 1?
as U.S. Attorney,
5, The Living Mummy.
the 2 Democratic senators from Connecticut supporting the nomination.
Mr. Trump appointed you.
As I've told you before,
Mr. Trump has pretty good...
there was a comic book code restriction against the undead. Here's the Headless Horseman. And so they changed the comics code and said it's okay to put monsters and horror in, but Marvel was still nervous and didn't want to. They had to point out it's the living mummy, it's Morbius the living vampire, it's the living Colossus. They're not dead. This one I need to upgrade. This is my childhood copy. If you look at it, it shows indentations because I traced it. I made a childhood comic about the Headless Horseman, but I traced the cover. You see how I traced the logo there? And I traced the whole picture right down to the flaming skull. I can feel it. It's almost like Braille. I can read it. I can feel it. Yeah. Sometimes you'll find comics like that and some budding artist has traced the cover. But I wouldn't trade it for the world. It's in bad shape because of that, but it's oh, I upgraded it. I already upgraded it. Oh, that's cool. My past self has already done it for me. Here's number 7. Yeah, I got to get some more bags and boards. Number 8.
The FBI came up with that. Did they not?
Number 9. Yeah, that's what I'll do in the next episode, is I'm going to get my Tomb of Draculas out and put them into these boxes. 9. Didn't I just show you 9? Yeah, I have 2 copies of 9. How about that? Everyone's forgotten about the living mummy. He's not, I don't think that the collectors, the slabbing people, look for the living mummy. I've never heard the living mummy talked about for the Marvel, the MCU, the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Here's Tomb of Darkness 12. Looks like Dracula, but it's not officially Dracula. That's 12. 13.
Authority to look at Clinton and Manafort meeting and exchanging polling data.
It's a Kirby story reprinted. DC pretty much. Oh no. It has a. it has a story reprinted that's not that old here. This is from Chamber of Darkness #1, which was Stan Lee and John Buscema. That's only from a few years before. That's just from the very late 60s, and this is, well, 25 cents. You're starting to get more into the mid 70s. So I guess it was a few years old, but,
I think it was a good idea for you to look into it, see if the FBI wasn't correct.
and I guess
Collusion
usually you think Marvel's going to reprint stuff that's older.
campaign to elect Trump.
My assignment was to look at the conduct of the intelligence community agencies.
Here's 22 of Tomb of Darkness.
It was done by House, or it was done by the Senate, or it was done by Director Mueller.
23.
I think that if there was the intelligence communities, the FBI, others came up with this information and did good work.
Tower of Shadows #1. This is a Silver Age book because to me, if it has that corner box, it's Silver Age. That's just how I am. When it goes to the band across the top, then it becomes the Bronze Age. That's how I do it here in this here museum, and we're all museum curators. We're preserving the past for the future. Just be aware that your exhibits in your museum may not have the value in the future. They'll still have tremendous cultural, significant, historical value. But I just don't think they'll have the monetary value they do now. It's just like old pulps still have value, but there's a very small pool of people that want them. Big Little books, they're not valueless. They don't give them away. But more and more, you can go into an antique mall and maybe find them for just a little bit of money. Tower of Shadows #4. I got this one recently from Gotham City Comics. I know that because it's written on the back there. Okay, that was 4. Here's #5.
The chair recognizes the gentleman, Mr. Fitzgerald.
Ooh, I'm missing 6. Here's 7.
Mr. Durham, thanks for being here today. On October 3rd, 2016,
I don't have 8. Here's 9. If there's anything you're wanting to see, put it down in the comments below. If there's some particular books you want to see, or I promised I was going to show some Marvel black and white horror. I was going to show some Vampirella. Give me an idea what you want to see. I was kind of wanting to show some Fantastic Fours. I'll be glad to do that. You let me know,
That's correct.
and I'll come up with new. If you want me to come up with new acronyms,
$1 million, somehow he could actually follow through.
this is UT, Uncanny Tales.
Specific.
It takes a long time to say Uncanny Tales, so I call it U. No, well, it's Uncanny Tales from the Grave. When did they change?
3 days.
Yeah, it was Uncanny Tales from the Grave. Let's make it more clearly horror, because Uncanny Tales could just mean that you could have a science fiction story in Uncanny Tales, but if you make it Uncanny Tales from the Grave, it's more clear that you are definitely a horror comic.
And did the FBI propose making continued
Here's 4.
payments to Dan Chain?
Remember this childhood
More than
copy.
$300,000.
This is kind of like what's going on right now in the House
Chain found a confidential
Judiciary
source
Committee, right?
and lists his own subsource, Charles Dolan, as was brought up earlier, who was a Democrat operative and had previously served
5.
as advisor to Hillary Clinton's 2008 presidential campaign.
I'm missing 6. Here's 7.
Did Danchenko
This is a beat up. Yeah, this copy's trashed. I remember finding this at an antique mall in a little town out in the middle of nowhere, almost a ghost town in Texas. But it was a town that was famous for its antique stores. So I drove out there. Can't remember what it was called, and I remember finding that back probably in the 1990s. 12. Oh, here's Vault of Evil. This was my childhood copy. I remember buying that.
You think it had anything to do with he was simply worried that disclosing
Vault of Evil, also known as the Democratic National Committee.
jeopardized the whole payroll deal that the FBI.
Here's 5.
When you lay these facts out, there's other facts in the report.
Oh, that's great. Look at this girl trying to
From those facts.
Get out of that car.
Of the hundreds of individuals
That's
who the
cool.
FBI interviewed through the course of Crossfire Earth,
Man, these books are great. This is a childhood copy. I remember this bug, man.
this came up earlier. Was Charles Dolan ever interviewed?
6.
He was not.
Then I don't have 7, 8, and 9. Here's 10.
Why the FBI would not interview him or overlook such a high-profile person?
There's another copy of 10.
That's something of a mystery, going back to October 3rd, according to the AGLAC.
There's 11.
Head Shaping Bureau, when he first, I'm sorry, we're going back to July 5th.
Oh, another copy of 11.
Steele had indicated to
There's 12. That was a childhood copy. I don't have 13. Here's a 14. There's a lot of issues I really need to get. 15.
with Dolan's name as somebody who might have information related to Trump.
16.
I don't know why they never interviewed Trump. I'm sorry, why they did not interview Mr. Dolan, but they didn't. The explanation was given.
17.
Intelligence analysts referred to in the report essentially.
18.
That would be outside the scope of the mission, outside of the SEAL role.
You noted your report on
I just showed that one. Another copy. I don't need to keep showing you duplicate copies. Here's 19.
who ceased all research and analysis related to Dolan. Unquote.
23. I think I showed you all these same books last summer, but maybe we've got new people watching. There's another 23. I don't know why I put War is Hell in here. I don't know. I guess because it's almost like, this is almost like a horror comic because I'll show you. At a certain point, I don't know. There's reprinting Sergeant Fury here. Another Sergeant Fury reprint. Where? Oh, okay. This is why I kind of consider it a horror comic. This is the first issue of War is Hell I ever bought, and by this point they had given a horror host to it, like a Death. So they were kind of almost making it more like Weird War Tales from DC. So once Death became the host, see, that's why I consider War is Hell a horror comic. Because he would appear. Yeah, see.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Special Counsel Durham in March of 2019, before releasing the Mueller report to the public, Attorney General.
Oh, this is the guy. This guy. What is his name? I can't even. Man, Mr. I can't read it because my eyes are so bad. This guy's the guy that was afraid that Guam would capsize if we put too many soldiers on the island of Guam. The island might just turn over. This guy here, Johnson, from what does it say, Georgia? Yeah, he's a real winner. Where is hell? It's like they're trying to make it look like Hot Wheels or something, the logo. It looks like the Hot Wheels logo.
Russia investigation once Trump was out of office.
Weird Wonder Tales, number 3. Some of these Weird Wonder Tales, they reprinted stories of Venus,
Investigation had
from the 50s.
taxpayers over $6.5 million. Is that correct?
I remember, this is a childhood copy,
At that point, probably not.
number 6.
At this point, how much?
Number 16, I missed a bunch of issues, and